Hello everybody and welcome to my vlog. Right, so I'm just popping around to my mum's to sort out the insurance on our thatched cottage, which is obviously Thatcher's, you know. But let's crack on with the first news story of the day whilst I'm walking. Scientists reckon that apparently up to 30 million homes in Europe could be completely self-sufficient with advances in solar panels, which I think is amazing. Obviously some battery storage will be required to make that work, and I imagine probably somewhere so far north as the UK that's not going to work just because of, you know, winter. I hate winter, it spoils all the fun, doesn't it? But yeah, I mean, the march of solar continues. Hi Mum. Scientists from the Karlsruhe, hang on a second, is it? Karlsruhe, yeah. Oh, sorry. Oh, okay. Well, that was fun. Just about got that sorted now. Limited insurance companies, so many questions. Anyway, back to the solar. So the Karlsruhe Institute of Technology in Germany has found that in 2021, I think it was, 50% of Europe's 41 million standalone homes could have been energy self-sufficient from solar and batteries, which is awesome. I mean, that's a huge amount of energy generation there, and economic activity that stays within the European Union zone. I don't know if it includes the UK, I mean, we're in Europe. Anyway, what they're suggesting is that by 2050, that number could rise to 75%. I mean, it does seem like an absolute no-brainer to me. Put solar panels on your roof. They're magic. Anyway, what they're saying is that advances in solar and battery are going to enable people to actually take their houses off-grid if they want. Now, they're also saying that that's probably not the best idea from a macro energy point of view. Better to actually balance load on the grid and stay connected. Presumably that will actually mean that you have to make enough money from feeding power back to the grid that you can pay the standing charge. Otherwise it'd still be cheaper to actually, you know, disconnect and have done with it. But yeah, I mean, I've always loved the idea of being off-grid, or at least off-grid when, you know, you want to be. This does actually highlight to me, however, that if the government was to mandate batteries and solar panels on roofs for freestanding buildings, you know, where it's possible, especially on the sort of the new builds, that's where you do it, because, you know, they're spending a lot of money building the thing anyway, then it becomes possible over time to really start to chip away at, you know, the source of the energy that we're using as a society, and actually turn it into something that's more sustainable and more economically beneficial. And it's better for the country, it's better for the individual, it's better for everybody except the sort of oil and gas companies. It's not better for them. And speaking of energy generation and solar and Germany, and also in this case California, I've been reading an interesting article about some panelists who have said about the downsides of having too much solar, too much renewable energy on the grid without sufficient storage, which is where the having batteries as well bit comes in, I think. You know, it ties in quite nicely with the previous story. So in California, they've, a bit like Germany had a few years ago, they've got far too many solar panels on people's roofs, not enough storage, and the end result is the, you know, amount of power that's being generated fluctuates by too much, and it becomes quite difficult and costly to actually manage that and provide a stable voltage to the grid. Fundamentally, the problem is, if you can't control when the power is going to turn up and when it isn't, then it becomes very difficult to provide value to the grid when you feed energy back in, because it could come at the wrong time. It could literally come when negative prices for energy are in effect. So therefore you end up with a very much reduced feed-in tariff, or no feed-in tariff at all, which means that you're not making money from your solar panels when you're not using the power. It's basically, if you've got solar panels, you should really think about a battery. It's not been necessary in the past when there wasn't a huge amount of solar generation on people's roofs, but as the percentage of renewable energy that gets generated goes up in a given area, it becomes more and more important to add in some sort of grid storage to that mix. And the best way to do that is to have lots of small batteries in every home and house and apartment block in the nation. And I'm confident that over time that is the direction it's going to end up going. I know people say, oh, you know, batteries, they cause fires. Well, there are so many batteries in people's houses anyway, and most of the time they actually don't cause fires at all. It's still mainly cooking accidents and people smoking cigarettes and falling asleep that causes the majority of domestic fires. And on top of that, batteries are becoming safer and safer. So I think this is a bit of a red herring. And sticking with solar, this is turning into a bit of a solar powered vlog post, this one. It's a shame it's so dark outside. I could go get my solar panels and contribute. Anyway, so China is apparently investing so much into new energy, renewable energy generation, well, the manufacturing of that new energy generation, so in other words, the creation of solar panels, that is actually stymieing investment in other parts of the world. And I think this is something that governments should really look at across the globe. Do you want to have to buy all your solar panels from China from now until the end of time? Or would you like to have a little bit of your own homegrown manufacturing industry? I know which one I would choose. And while we're on the subject of China, I read an interesting article in The Guardian that says that China is actually approaching peak carbon emissions, so the point where they'll actually start to decrease year on year rather than still increasing. It's an often mentioned trope that the UK, there's no point us trying to cut carbon emissions, because even if we went to completely zero straight away, in 12 months' time, China would have more than made up the difference with its own growth in carbon emissions. Well, that was obviously true in the past. That's not a sufficient excuse for us to not do it, though. Apart from anything, the fact that everybody is building out renewable energy generation and storage is one of the things that will enable China to also move away from fossil fuels and other forms of burning stuff to make energy. Well, it's not really making energy, is it? Gaining access to energy. This is extremely good news for the planet as a whole. It is going to take a fair amount of time for it to significantly drop, I have no doubt, but hopefully they will see over time that actually renewable energy is cheaper and better long term for the country as a whole, and actually for individuals as well, because if it's not better for individual people, they won't do it. That's the lesson of EVs. So in further sign of Chinese success, they actually met their targets for generating solar and wind power for the whole year of 2023. They met those targets in September, so a full 3 months before the end of the year, which is great. And they've already exceeded the 20% generation target for those power sources that they had set for 2025. So to be honest, it sounds like the economics of actually making this happen have managed to leap ahead of the government regulation. Perhaps China should tighten things up, or maybe they don't need to, because that is the way things are going anyway. And finally, bringing solar back to actually what's going on in the UK a bit, there is a hospital in East Sussex which is putting solar panels across the roofs of its car park, and the hope, combined with other measures such as double glazing and more energy efficiency, etc., is to reduce the carbon emissions of the hospital by 57% by 2025 and to achieve net zero by 2040, which is awesome because, hospitals do actually use a huge amount of power. This solar car park is going to produce about 1.1 megawatts of power at peak, which is enough to power 350 homes. It's quite a project. Right, I have a bit of a busy day tomorrow and I've got lots to get on with today. We're going to a trade show in London, so that'll be fun. But that does mean I'm going to have to call today's vlog post to a close. I hope you found it interesting, and if you have, remember to leave a like and share it and subscribe if you haven't already. And I will see you in my next episode in a few days' time. Bye!